People forget their past, they forget the truth, but pictures don't lie. Forgotten gunslingers like Nat Love, Izam Dart, Cherokee Bill, and troops too like the Ninth and 10th. See, people forget that almost one out of every three cowboys was black. Because when the slaves were free, a lot of them headed out west, built their own towns. Shit, they didn't have much choice. I'm Chris Spivey.
And I'm Eddie Webb.
And today we're here to talk about a forgotten classic, a masterpiece of cinema, Posse, 1993. Hello, listeners. I know that you're likely not shocked if you listened to the last episode episodes ago where we talked about going to do Posse. If anything, you're surprised that we decided to cover Posse, but if you know me, there's no way that we could not cover Posse.
I didn't know, shockingly, I didn't know anything about this movie because that's been my experience most of this run. But specifically, I was surprised at how badly regarded this film is. And so I definitely went into this with mixed feelings, put it that way. But my lack of trust in critics and in Rotten Tomatoes has held me in good stead because Rotten Tomatoes says this is a 33% movie, and I disbelieve absolutely everything Rotten Tomatoes always tells me. So I was like,
Yeah.
well, maybe it's pretty good then.
Where to start? So like I said, there's no way that we could not talk about Posse because it was trying to do something. And I'm gonna leave it at that for that piece of it. But it was directed by Mario Van Peebles. This is also a little bit of a family affair with this movie, much how
Mm-hmm.
Silverado was a family affair. But this one also has Melvin Van Peebles, who is Mario Van Peebles' father, who, for people that don't know, Van Peebles was part of the Black exploitation movement. Some people could say that he was one of the innovators of it with
Mm-hmm.
Sweet Sweet back from one that we almost covered for the Patreon, but changed my mind at the last minute. But he was also a musician who had multiple albums in the 70s that were kind of a spoken word experimental albums. But I'm bringing it up specifically because he made a song for this one called Cruel Jim Crow, which was his first new song in like 20 years at the time, which
Mm-hmm.
then led him to drop an album like a year or two later.
Right. And I did not realize until later in the movie because once again I used Prime Video to watch this, and they have the trivia and who played what, and then realized that he ends up playing the main character, Mario Van Peebles' character's father-in-law. So basically, his father plays his father-in-law as functionally
Yeah.
in the movie, and so it's just like that's cute. I like that.
This is the first film that was distributed by G&C Pictures, so that was something that I thought was interesting. The way that Mario Van Peebles got to make this movie is because of the phenomenal success of New Jack City
Right,
in
I did find
1991.
that. Yeah. And I think part of the reason why, what little I vaguely recalled this movie, I was like, when I started looking into it a little bit, I was like, wasn't this the movie that was like supposed to be like the big New Jack City, but in the West kind of movie? And again, I don't. I just trust trailers. I just trust Rotten Tomatoes. And this is another case where like I vaguely remember a trailer now that kind of implied that, and this movie is nothing like that.
Well, part of the thing was the reason that it had at the time modern music is they wanted to use modern music to try to get the younger audience in to watch
Oh
the
sure.
film while trying to have like the message of black cowboys and everything infused into it. So it was trying to do something to keep its audience while bringing a new audience while also educating people at the same time.
No, right. And like I mean, the movie's called Posse, and like so from a certain perspective of the early '90s, that has a certain resonance. But the movie's kind of going, no, actually, that also has a resonance in from history, right? And so like that's kind of what seems to be playing in that space. And also like hey, Tone Loc's in this, so I'm like, okay, I'm expecting a certain kind of thing to happen, and I'll talk about Tone Loc in a minute because he was delightful.
It's just
But
not Tolok, like Big Daddy's in this. Everyone
right,
is in this film. Everybody is in this film.
right, but like the the movie that this whole movie felt like white executives were told one thing and then they made the movie they actually wanted to make and it was too late to change course, right? We've seen this tactic a few times through this run of some form of like, oh no, we're totally gonna make New Jack City but in the West, it's fine. And then no, we're actually gonna make a straight up fucking Western.
It's so funnily enough, it was hard to find a lot of information about this film. Like the
Okay.
stuff I found was counterintuitive. Like one thing would say something, something would say something else.
Right.
But from my understanding, no. They like, what do you want to make? He's like, I want to make a Western. And he told them what he was going to make. So much so that when the film itself was actually made, it hit a controversial thing because there was a theater chain that didn't want to show the movie because they said they were concerned. I'm using finger quotes about violence erupting if people saw the movie. And there was like this
Right.
big public thing between Marvin Peoples and that theater line about and how it discriminates against primarily black led films and like black producers and everything else. So that was
Right.
a whole discussion that happened also around this film.
Mhm. Yeah, and so like I could see that. And what was interesting to me, like this was we talked a bit about in Silverado, how like I said Silverado didn't feel like from a cinematography perspective, it didn't feel like a Western. It felt like a different version of Western. Like it was an 80s action film that was set in a Western. And this was kind of another step along that line, right? Where like at first I was like, this is people who maybe aren't necessarily into westerns trying to shoot a western, but I realized that's wrong. I realized pretty quickly I was
Yeah.
wrong on that one. These people who really do like westerns, they were just trying something visual, and so like I kind of got more of the vibe of let's try to synthesize some of the stuff we did with like New Jack City with some of the things that we did in westerns to come up with a third path. I have opinions on how successful that was, but it's definitely another kind of step forward of like here's how this genre is evolving visually, and it's happening pretty fast. I mean, like this is only 10 years or no, like 12 13 years since Heaven's Gate, right? So like there's been a lot of visual innovation to westerns that didn't happen over the previous decades.
And the other thing that we also have to remember is around this time, I think Unforgiven came out like in 92.
Oh, okay.
Tombstone was out in 93, so it's kind of the same year
Right.
Tombstone dropped. And so you have all these Western there. So there have been other Westerns coming out. So you want to approach them differently, which
Right.
some of the conflicting information I found is one source sort of says the movie had a budget of like $3.5 million. Then
Hmm.
something else that had a budget of $10 million. So there's a vast
Wow.
difference in budget numbers versus saying it made at the box office about 20 million,
Hmm.
which means
Okay.
it likely did not find its audience that it wanted. And that could be from Western bloat at the time. It could have been the fact that it was black people starring in a Western. And as someone that made historically accurate Western stuff, you can tell you there's a lot of pushback. And that's me in like 2020, much less Peoples in 1993.
Right. And to your point, like we're slowly walking up to the point where I start re-engaging with westerns again. Um, and you're right, there was a whole bunch of westerns in the 90s. Um, in retrospect, a surprising amount. Because in my head, I still don't think of western as a genre that's largely faded away, but there were a lot of them in the 90s. And I don't remember much about this movie. Like I said, bits and pieces that came to my mind when I started looking into it again. Um, but like I'm talking about, I think maybe I saw this trailer on one of the VHS tapes I was watching. They usually put trailers before the VHS you watch, and I think I may have saw one of those there, kind of things.
Yeah.
So yeah, this did kind of fade pretty rapidly. And to my earlier point, like I did look into some of the criticisms of the movie, um, and much like other movies we've talked about in this run, critical reception seems to be pretty heavily mixed. Um, weirdly, I think Van Peebles' directing style gets the biggest stick in this movie. Um, and I can see some of that, but it does also seem a bit like, okay, why is this director getting this much stick? Is it because they had a very successful film that you couldn't easily compartmentalize, and so therefore you had to find something to pick on? Is it because the director's black? Is it both of these things? I don't know.
Some of the critical stuff I read was much like yours, mixed, but it was spread between like the story of the movie. It was about Ben Peebles' directing style, and it kind of bounced all over the place. And I keep thinking about Siskel and Ebert's, essentially, like
Yeah,
that version of it that I'd read, and how it talks about, it was negative towards the directing style and the story, and gave it like 2 out of 4 stars essentially
yeah,
for the film itself. And I'm not going to go into a lot of the other critics and what they said about it. I'm going to focus more on the production side, and then we can go through it. And we might include that in like our wrap up.
right, maybe,
So
yeah,
I'm going to focus on like some of the anachronisms in the film, because it was a lot of history went into it, so they knew stuff. But at the same time, there were some anachronisms. Like, for instance, there was one of the flag that's shown has 50 stars on it instead of 45 that should have been there in 1898.
right.
So little things like that. The biggest thing that people like to point out, though, is the fucking tricorn hat that he wears later in the film.
Which is
Graham.
weird. It's weird that people point that out because I interpreted that as he's just being fucking weird. The character's being fucking weird, right? I didn't. As an anachronism, it's like going. I mean, well, I guess we'll talk about that character when we get there, but like that character's bizarre and strange. And so like I assumed he was just like, I'm gonna dress like someone from the American Revolution, and I didn't see it as an anachronism at all. Like I was more pinged by, like, I did notice the flag, for example, and they go, no, man, two of those states didn't exist until like 50 years after this. Come on, you know.
And so I think that is people trying to find things wrong with
Right.
the film to dogpile on top of it.
Yeah.
Because for me, at that point in time, we'll get there eventually, but I almost considered him a pirate for how he was dressing with the
Right.
that's everything else. Leaving that.
Right. Exactly.
So that's why I don't want to talk about that criticism much, but it's hard not to, from how much it's been dogpiled onto the movie.
Right. And so like I'm living, because again, I just kind of skims the criticism, but like given the context, I could see why a lot of audiences basically wanted this to be New Jack City but Western, and misunderstanding what New Jack City was actually about. Because on some level, this is that. But if they were hoping people like, the prominent hip hop artists acting a very specific way in this movie, and that was going to be like the lion's share of the film, as opposed to one small piece of a larger tapestry of black fraternity in the face of oppression, which is a lot of what New Jack City is about. And it's like this movie does thematically extend very much from that movie, but it is visually, tonally, aesthetically quite different. And I think people may get wrapped up in the aesthetics and going, oh, well, this movie is more New Jack City, so I don't like it. Right? It could be that too. It's like, and to be reductive, I could see some audiences in '93 going, oh, it's not black enough, right? I'm being, from a white perspective, reductive. I'm going. I saw New Black.
Eddie
I saw New
sees the
Jack
look
City.
on my face right now in case
Right.
people are curious why he's suddenly
why I'm quickly backpedaling, is because I'm very much talking from a certain perspective, right? It's like, again, '91, they saw New Jack City, go, oh, this is my own experience with black cinema, therefore I want more of this. And to a point, like, there's a certain trend in '90s films I've noticed where like the end credits songs for certain kinds of films are always hip hop. Men in Black comes to mind, right? It's like Will Smith's in it, so of course Will Smith's going to do a hip hop song at the end of it. And so it's like, but it doesn't fit anywhere else in
Eddie's
the movie.
just trying to get you all ready for when we cover Wild Wild West.
Oh God. I'm a little afraid that may actually be on the list. It's a spider. No, Jesus. right. But like I remember being on this time period, like there was a much firmer demarcation, right? There were black films, and they looked and sounded a certain way. I have since learned that is wildly incorrect, but that it filtered down to me in the 90s.
People have always had that perspective since the creation of films. We could talk about
I've learned that, yeah.
Michael Michonne from like the 1910s onward, where black people had to go and make their own media because we weren't being represented in white media.
Right,
But the thing is, those eventually sort of merged. But there's always been a distinction where a more white predominant studio tries to stop other stories from being told in general, and
right.
they use sometimes like the lie that black led films don't do as well overseas, which could be a whole other discussion that we could have in a larger context, but not around Posse, because I'm bringing us back to focus on
Sure,
Posse
sure,
because
sure.
it's
Right, right.
like in the production itself. There's, like I said, there wasn't a lot of stuff that was put out about it, but one of the funny facts that came up is that they supposedly specifically assigned a production assistant to follow Tone Loc
Yes.
around
Yeah.
between setup as he constantly wandered off and was frequently hanging out at the craft service table, either having like a snack or just talking to the people that were there. And it was slowing down production, so they had to have someone to get him back on set to shoot at the right times.
Okay, so Tone Loc was like one of my favorite parts of the movie, honestly, because he was clearly having so much fun with this film. You know, he was just happy to fucking be there. And so when I saw that bit of data, I was just like, no, I completely believe that. So I'm like, I'm going to do craft services because I'm in a movie. That's what people do in movies. They go to craft services. Right? I just very much see that happening because he was clearly like, this is awesome. You know?
Um. Okay. So I talked a little bit about the Cineplex and how they didn't want to show the movie.
Right.
For Australia, they had to edit out a lot of the love scene between Lana and Jesse Lee. And I'm going to say Jesse Lee because every time anyone refers to him, they say Jesse Lee and just
Yes,
not Jesse. It's Jesse Lee.
Lee.
So Australia had to like edit a lot of that out to make it a mature rating. So there are lots of cuts and things that also happened to the film for different areas.
Since we're talking about this, I don't see it on your notes, so I'll bring it up here. One thing I did find out about the movie, the actor who played Lana, this was her only nude sex scene she ever did in her career, apparently. And when she was being interviewed about it, they asked her what it was like to do it, and she's like, "There's the only time she actually felt comfortable doing that because the interviewer was like, wasn't it weird that the director and the person that the actor you're having sex with are the same person?" And she's like, "Actually, I really like that because there was one less man in the room."
Yeah.
And that was really telling to me. Is like, oh no, because the person I'm doing this scene with is also the director, so she felt like she had a lot more power to kind of shape and shift how that was being handled and whatnot, and also just one less guy kind of leering in the scene. Um, and so like that was actually really because I would have felt the same way. The interviewer Richard thought, I was like, it's probably weird that the director is saying, "Hey, I want you to have sex with me, and we're going to shoot this way," and she felt quite the reverse. It was really interesting insight.
Funnily enough, do you know that she is also? I know her mostly from Eureka.
From what
Eureka, the sci-fi TV series about like
I'm
the.
seeing it.
You never saw Eureka? There's like 5 seasons. It has Craig somebody and his daughter. They sort of stumble into like this top secret sciencey town where
Was
they're
she
doing
like
all
the
these weird.
cop of the town? Is that right?
She was like the government attaché essentially, like
Okay.
the CIA FBI person who interacted with the sheriff and everything else. Sci-fi fun, sci-fi series, pretty funny,
I
at least in
think
the day.
I've seen ads for it. I'm aware of the extremely vague concept. I don't think I've seen a full episode of it now.
Because it also had Joe Morton as like Henry is like the smartest person in town,
Hmm,
who is also awesome. Not helpful for Eddie. Eddie's like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" All right, I'll stop.
nice,
So
nice.
I went on to the Animal Humane Society for a link here because I was curious about some of the horse stuff. All of the scenes, the horses were riders were trained. They had stunt
Okay,
people. The ground was even prepared for all the horses' falls. That is a level of detail that went into this film.
very cool. Very cool.
I knew that was going to be something you're curious about, so I wanted to double check it.
Yes, because there's a very specific scene that is like 4 frames long that I want to talk about probably in depth.
And I think out of every movie we've seen, this one has the most horse stunts in it.
Yeah, I was really surprised slash impressed and how much horse stuff happened. Because it's like, why are we in the 90s? We're finally getting to see actual horse stuff. I think part of it's because there was that balance of like, do you have to get animal cruelty people to the point where they will allow certain things, but also the techniques and knowledge about how to get horse stunts to actually work and have animal stunts be an actual discipline, within the industry to manifest before you can start really doing this kind of stuff in a way that's not exploitative. So I think it's probably why it took this long. But it was like, cool, there's horse stuff. That's awesome.
Most of the film was actually filmed in Arizona, which serves the backdrop for both like the American West and for their scene set in Cuba.
Oh, okay. I was curious about that.
Is there anything else you want to talk about from the background, or you want to move into the movie itself proper?
Let's go into the movie because there's a lot to dig into actually.
Some would say too much.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, hold up, wait a minute. Stephen Baldwin. Stephen fucking Baldwin is listed first in the fucking credits.
Yeah.
Alphabetical order. Look at the credits again. Then 4 black actors are double billed immediately after his name before going back to solo names and titles. This is the first thing I noticed about the film.
Yep.
Then the legendary Woody Strode breaking down how the peacemaker fires, talking about history and how white America lies. Then gives us some real history to set up a motherfucking flashback.
Your favorite.
Yeah, that's where I stopped. I'm stopping on the start of the flashback.
Yeah, certainly. I saw that and I was just like, Stephen Baldwin, really? Okay, kind of weird. But then I saw Woody Strode, and I'm like, okay, now I'm just confused.
There's nothing on it, but in my mind's eye, I'm thinking there was some sort of deal that had to be made that would list the white guy before any of the black people to film. And they
Right,
say it's alphabetical, but not all the names are alphabetical.
At the end of the movie, they say in alphabetical order, right? And so at first I thought, oh, maybe that's it. But I'm like, no, wait, this is a Mario Van Peebles film starring Mario Van Peebles, but he's not the first credit. I'm like, that's super weird.
Yeah, and I didn't see anything. I don't know anything, but something, I feel like there had to be some sort of deal that was struck there.
It feels to me like a studio saying something like, we need to put Stephen Baldwin's name first so we can get the white audiences in. I feel like a conversation with those words probably happened.
Okay. I got it out of my system. I can let possibly some of that stuff go.
Right.
Anything about the opening intro, other than it's a flashback, that may have jumped out at you?
So structurally, this is not a million miles from other films we've seen, right? It's just other films would have had this as a crawl at the beginning or text at the beginning, right? It's we need to give you some historical context to understand the film you're about to watch. Except in this case, they do what I think is extremely smart move of using Woody Strode, well, in anything, frankly, but specifically to have that be like, I'm telling a story from this time period. And 93, you're just at the end of believable that someone could have lived that long. He would have been about 100, right? But like, we're just reaching the end of, okay, you could have just plausibly have lived in that time period.
You say that. It was only a couple years ago that like the last surviving person from like this that got a couple years ago, I think it was the last person that could get a pension from the Civil War died.
Okay, well,
So
right,
now,
but
mind you, that was like someone's kid, but still, it's more
well,
than
I mean,
100 years.
well, I know that like in the UK, there's only a handful of people who were involved in actions in World War II. They're reaching their hundreds or 90s, and they're starting to die off. And so, like every V-Day celebration, they trot them out, and there's like rapidly diminishing numbers of them. And so that's like 50 years after this. So that's why I'm thinking like offsetting a bit. It's if someone were to shoot a movie now and go, yes, I survived I lived in the American West. Cool. Are you a vampire? Because that must be the premise of this movie.
Are we talking about Paul Rudd? So at this point in time, Woody Strode was 79 for the film. And part
Right.
of the thing though is by having Woody do it, not only is it just awesome in general, but it also links it back to one of the few predominant black people that were in westerns at the time. Because he was
Right.
with John Ford, he was with Leone. He is like a legend.
Right. And that's when, like, because we've been doing this long enough, I immediately go, okay, no, these are people who actually, some people involved in this movie genuinely love westerns. Because, I mean, it's entirely possible they may have pulled Woody Stewart out just for his work in the 70s and 80s in general, right? But you're right, because we've seen him referenced in other movies we've watched. It's like that seems like a very specific Western pull, akin to how we've seen those kind of actors and cast in the 70s and 80s movies we've seen. Of like, we're pulling Western actors who've worked in the previous era of Westerns and putting them into our modern Westerns to kind of show that connectivity. So like, that's why I'm like, I'm confused because like, is this a marketing driven movie or is this made by people who really love Westerns? And the answer might be both, but certainly for a bit I was like, huh, what?
um, we're dropped into the Spanish American War in Cuba, 1898. Epic battle. Pew, 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 boom. The 10th Cavalry Regiment taking a beating while the White Army folks are back at base. Jesse Lee of the 10th races back to the racist Colonel Graham, who's having a portrait made of himself. And then Graham stresses that the situation could be better if they had a little bit more courage and they could go out and fight for how they are instead of being fobbits back at them. So maybe he'll let them retreat. Graham orders Jesse to shoot a white prisoner in exchange for allowing the 10th to actually retreat. Unable to kill the man in cold blood, Jesse Lee demonstrates excellent marksmanship by shooting the man's cigar from his mouth. Graham then kills a prisoner under the guise of desertion and offers Jesse Lee's command to the of the 10th to Little J, another white prisoner. The alternative would be to face a firing squad. Eddie, he's sitting
Yeah.
there having a portrait of himself made in a war zone that's about 10 feet away.
Yep.
Like, I, 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 I that
So
was my biggest issue with this.
I 1000% believed it. Partially because Billy Zane was fantastic casting for that role.
Oh,
Because Billy Zane plays over the top over the top villains extremely well, right? Like I could 100% believe this is a version of the Master, right? It's that level of melodramatic villain, you know. So like I was like, if anyone else had been doing this, I'd have been like, what the hell is going on? But I was like, oh, it's Billy Zane. Of course, this character makes no goddamn sense. Sure, all right, I'll roll with this.
you mean the replacement love interest in Twin Peaks makes no sense?
I
Do you
love it.
not
Love it.
remember that?
No,
Oh,
I don't.
oh. All right. Surprising no one, I'm going to take a minor diversion into a Twin Peaks. So when they decided that Kyle MacLachlan's girlfriend at the time, who I forgot the actress's name now, decided that he should definitely not be hooking up with Cheryl Finn on screen, talked to the writers, and the writer said, "Okay, Kyle, we won't do that for you, so your relationship stays solid." And then they brought in Billy Zane as like a wealthy person who gets infatuated with Cheryl Lee's character, and they kind of have a romance, sort of, kind of.
I actually completely forgot that was Billy Zane.
I don't
But
because Twin Peaks is emblazoned in my brain.
sure, but we've actually talked about this in some earlier films of like we're reaching an era where like the reputations of the actors haven't quite solidified yet. But Billy Zane in '93 has a specific kind of character he plays now, and will go on to play for quite a while, which is
What,
this kind of melodramatic villain.
Eddie? I full and wholeheartedly push back against that because Billy Zane was a motherfucking Phantom in his purple outfit. Do you not remember the Phantom? That was in the 90s.
Okay, then I'll take back the word villain, but not melodramatic. I will live with that one.
Okay, I totally agree with that. This shows a
And
depth of my wasted childhood to know all these movies.
and arguably Billy Zane was the only victim in the Phantom movie as a whole, but that's either there.
Oh, and okay, the portrait itself is really bad, by the way.
Go,
Like
yeah,
that
yeah, it's
was
terrible. Which
horrible.
I took as part of the joke, honestly, right? It's like not I didn't take it as someone on set got this portrait knocked up and said, "Oh crap, it's bad. We'll just roll with it." I took it as this guy is so up his own ass he doesn't realize how bad this portrait is.
God, because they judge a man by his profile. I think what it was is that he just ordered a random army dude under his command to do a portrait of him, and so that
Right, right.
reflects.
I completely believe
Yeah.
that's what happens. And like, we've seen over the top racists in various movies up to now, and this is a slightly different over the top racist. In the sense that it's not entirely over the top, which I think helps actually the movie a little bit, because of seeing this kind of violence actually absolutely did happen. And the fact that Billy Zane is playing it like it's just a normal day at the park is the part that's over the top, right? He's just playing it like whatever. I'm just in arbitrarily cruel because whatever, and it's like, and again, weirdly this works for me, because I'm like, okay, this is just he's just a monster. What's the fact that he's a racist is kind of only one piece of this whole puzzle.
And the thing is, you're fairly certain here he is a racist just from how he's talking and engaging with him, but it hasn't been 100% cemented. It's like 80%, and you're like
Right,
notching it up more and more. It'll be fully cemented in a minute, but
right,
it's
yeah,
getting there because he's trying to talk to him about courage and what it means to be a soldier while he's surrounded by white guys who are not fighting and who are all sort
right,
of giggling. And even so much so, shows you that he even treats them badly too. But then it goes back to the old thing of that they used. Never mind. I'm not going to go into that for this because this is a ridiculous movie. He throws a cigar and all the white dudes jump to pick up his used cigar
yep.
to show you how much of a power discrepancy there is between him, much less his racism.
Right, right. So it's the yes, he's racist, and that is like you said, it'll be cemented in a minute. But even here, it's still very much implicit. But also, he's just an asshole, right? He's a power mad asshole, and that's really kind of the racism is one piece of that larger thing. And so Colonel Graham is just chewing the scenery, right, in a way that I'm finding extremely enjoyable. It's like, oh yeah, no, this guy's gonna get straight up murdered, and I'm gonna applaud it. It's gonna be awesome.
And I'm in 100% agreement with you that if they had done Doctor Who in America in the 90s, Billy Zane should have been the master, and this version of him should have been the master. His
Yes,
tricord hat suit and all.
yes,
Oh, it would be
exactly,
amazing.
exactly. That's why I had no problem with tricorn hat because like going, of course he's gonna wear a tricorn hat because he's basically the master. What are you talking about?
And then we transition for the poker scene, which tells
Yep,
you everything you need to know about little Jay, who's staring at the other guy's glasses to see his cards to win. Like that
so good.
entire character.
Yep,
Good.
yep.
Anything else before I move on?
Yeah, I mean, I did like. I don't want to call this movie a subtlety because I don't think that's a fair assessment. But like, there's layers where like little J being put in charge of the unit, right? There's a couple layers happening here. We have Colonel Graham going the traditional villain thing of like, you don't agree with me, I'm going to shoot my henchman to get to the guy who agrees with me, right? Which is again, it's a classic move. But by doing that, I would like the black unit to do the thing that's highly dangerous while white guys stay here. Oh, you don't want to do that. I'm going to now put a white guy in charge of it. This guy is very clearly a criminal. So you get that implication of Graham equates black people and criminals to be roughly equivalent in his head. So like
And
it's not subtle, but it's layered.
in a historical context is like in America, black people have pretty much fought in every single war. And when they
Mm,
started having black units and things, they would put a white officer in charge of the black units because they didn't think black people were capable of doing that themselves.
okay. Okay.
So there's your historical context also for it.
Nice. All right. I mean, not nice, but yeah, it's cool.
Graham then orders the 10th to fall back in order to begin another mission, one in which that will require them to wear civilian clothing as opposed to cavalry uniforms. They're ordered to rob a Spanish gold shipment, which is set up to give the colonel an excuse to execute the entire 10th as deserters. As he meets him with his own cavalry forces, his aide Wheezy causes a distraction, allowing the 10th to shoot the colonel and his cavalry down. Pop, pop. Our fully cementedness for Graham is the more tea bit that
The
he does with
Moti
Wheezy.
tribe, yeah, yeah.
And not only is it racist and insulting, it shows you that he has an understanding of the indigenous tribes and their people, but doesn't care about them, so he's insulting them and black people and everyone together.
Yeah, and there's a great bit where he does that, and he puts the teacup up, very clear signals it's a joke, and like it's a beat or even two before the other white officers start laughing. So like it's very much they're only laughing because they're afraid he'll kill them or otherwise have power over them.
I may need to rewatch it, or it could be that they didn't understand it.
Also true. Fair.
Because Jesse Lee immediately understands it.
Yes.
Wheezy understands it. He knows his own joke, and then the dumb white people have to go, wait a second.
Right, yeah, because we have a great shot of Jesse Lee and Wheezy, their faces visibly going, I'm furious, but I'm going to, well, Wheezy being terrified, Jesse Lee being furious, and both respectively covering up their emotions. But then there's a beat before the white people start laughing. And so it's like, it very much played like, no one thinks this is funny, right? Except for maybe Graham.
Wheezy, in addition to being terrified, though, is also ashamed of himself,
Yeah.
because that's why he glances back at Jesse Lee,
Right.
who then looks at him, because then that breaks down into the enslavement thing about how you would have enslaved people in the house and enslaved people in the field. Like, there are a whole bunch of layers working in this very not subtle movie.
Right. This is also the part where I'm not even going to be ashamed of this. I straight started thinking him as the master at this point in time, because this plan is bananas, right? It's okay, I'm going to take this unit, I'm going to dress them as civilians to rob the Spanish gold shipment so they can then bring the gold back to me, but I can say they're deserters and then shoot them, but I have the gold. And I'm just like, just steal the gold, man. You're at war with these people. You don't need an excuse.
But then he can't be fully racist, Eddie.
Right, I know, but it was just so funny because I'm like, I completely bought this elaborate nonsense plan, and partially because you're right, the historical context we're working with, this is very plausible. I mean, talking about the Lobo comic, where a very similar thing happens. Like, all these crimes get blamed on the black man because it's very easy for the white people to believe that's actually true. And so like that context is there. But then when you take a step back, and like even Jesse Lee's kind of going, are you sure? Right? So like even characters inside the movie are going, this seems like a setup, like a really obvious setup. And Graham's like, no, it's a secret mission. And Jesse's like, all right.
So they didn't know that. So let's get into more detail. They didn't know they were stealing gold. They were told a secret mission. When Jesse Lee, notice how we keep saying Jesse Lee. Jesse Lee discovers the gold. That's when he realizes what happened.
Well,
that's why his whole thing changes.
But it was a secret mission to go deal with this convoy, and it's like, why do we have it dressed up in mundane clothes? It's like, oh, because it's a secret mission. It's just like, you're sending the only black unit in Cuba under a secret mission, so they don't attract attention.
And it's even more stated when Graham, talking to Jesse Lee when he first comes back, talks about how he was a prisoner who's only getting to serve in the military, so he's not in jail, to send you now on an illegal mission. So it's like exposition.
Yes.
Eddie, all the boxes said Acme.
I missed that, actually. That's amazing. It tells you that. It tells the tone of this movie, right?
Made me smile a whole lot. We can talk about the stone horses here if you want, or we can wait. There's a whole bunch of horse action.
This is not when a Bobo punches a horse, is it?
It is.
Okay.
I can't remember exactly what happens. Maybe not.
All right, I'll talk about this then. It's either right here or right after here, but he punches a horse, Chris. Right? But more specifically, it is, I think, the second or third time in this run where I was like, I got that reference, because this is 20 years after Blazing Saddles.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a Blazing Saddles reference.
Yes. Me too, because Obo's a huge guy. Mondo is a huge guy, and they
Right.
both drop a horse in one hit.
And the reason why I was so happy about this because the movie at this point in time, I was like, this isn't a comedy, but it's very clearly melodramatic, right? And so for them to take what was very explicitly a joke in Blazing Saddles and play it more or less straight in this movie, I was like, no, I got your tone. You've dialed in a very specific tone. I'm here with you. I'm for it.
And this is when Jesse Lee also becomes the Man in Black. Literally the
Yeah.
Man in Black for the
Yep.
rest of this movie.
Yep. The hat, the whole 9 yards.
We're gonna come back to that hat.
Oh yeah. Well, yes, we are.
Anything else for this piece?
No, let's move on.
When Graham and his troops supposedly dead, the remnants of the 10th, including Jesse, Obo, Angel, and Little J, along with Wheezy, sneak out of Cuba. While aboard ship, Jesse goes into a flashback. While the pirate Graham deduces they escaped. We hard cut. I mean, like, just boom, Nolan's. During Mardi Gras, Jesse gets some better weapons, so get some pistols he really likes. Then we jump into party time. While the others party, having sexy time, Little J befriends a gambler, Father Time, and helps him escape after being discovered he is a big cheater.
Right. So I made reference to passing to Tone Loc. He's playing Angel at this point. And again, this is where I start to realize Tone Loc is just happy to fucking be here, right? He's like, I'm in a Western and this is amazing. And I'm going to kind of talk like I'm in a Western, but not really, but I don't care. And nobody else cares. And it's like, are you having fun, Tone Loc? Like, yes, this is awesome. Because there's a few lines during the scene where I feel like he improv stuff and they just kept it in.
I don't know, because there was not a lot of information about it.
I know, but like, so Angel's not the comic relief necessarily because unlike other movies,
supposed to be Wheezy.
Right? I think Weezy's supposed to be, but also he's weirdly dramatic at some parts of the movie. So Angel's supposed to kind of just is in the slightly funny but serious strong guy as opposed to the actual strong guy, Bobo. And so like Angel and Little J kind of fill roughly similar space in the movie, but they're both doing very different things with that space, which is great. And so again, like Angel helped me to kind of cement the tone this movie's going for. It's like we're not making fun of Westerns, it's not a comedy, but there's more than a little bit of Blazing Saddle DNA in this movie of like we love Westerns and we just think Westerns are great and we want to do cool Western things. But again, it's different from Silverado because Silverado was let's put all the tropes in, right? This is not quite doing that. This is just we're just excited to be on this kind of set and doing horse stuff and with gun tricks, that's what it feels like. And Angel was my center point of realizing just how much fun some of the cast are having with this movie.
So for me, though, Little J is their trickster archetype, essentially.
Right, the film. Right.
Which means I can't see him filling the same slot as Angel. And I like your definition of what Angel does, because I was trying to figure out where Angel really fits as he floats around in the film.
Right. He's kind of like the slightly humorous backup to a lot of other characters, right? He's not quite as strong as Bobo. He's not quite as good of a shoot as Jesse Lee. He's not quite as much a trickster as Little J, but he's able to be there and see that people could bounce off of him, and he feels like he's part of that set, right? Which I think worked really well. But you're right. Little J is more of a trickster, but they're both the funny support guy, although Little J is rapidly becoming his own thing here, which we'll get to in a second. Yeah.
And all right, so Wheezy having the idea of shipping them all overseas as corpses, love it, brilliant. And the beat, oh, I didn't tell you this, is a nice little touch too.
Yeah.
But it's the fact that we have our Mr. T moment, which I can't do confined spaces. They saw the A-Team in it. These motherfuckers.
Right.
The A-Team was like, we'll get a big, strong guy, can't take little tight boxes.
Yep.
And it'll knock him out. just how they always have to knock out B.A. Baracus every
Right.
single fucking time.
And weirdly, I'm more fine with it here because it is a predominantly black cast doing this, so it's like it's not the black guy who's scared of it. It's Obobo is scared of it, and it's like that felt better to me when I watched it. But certainly, I was just like, oh, they're gonna knock him out or knock him unconscious, or trick him or somehow. Okay, yeah, there it is. All right.
And for all the pulpiness involved in this movie, it has a level of realism too, where like someone whacks your ass over the head, you're probably going to fall unconscious, regardless of your size. And he whacks him over the head and he falls unconscious.
Right.
I know it's
Yeah.
scripted, but there's other parts where that's also displayed too throughout the movie.
Right.
So some of it could be a tonal dissonance, actually, depending on how you look at it.
Yeah. So how do you feel about nested flashbacks, Chris?
Ugh, God. I would, you know what? I would be more forgiving of these flashbacks that tell a lot of Jesse's story, because Jesse is not going to be a very overly verbose character. Is not what they're doing with Jesse Lee.
Right.
But it doesn't work given the fact, minor spoiler, we know who's telling this fucking story 100 years later. There is no way the narrator would know what is going through Jesse Lee's head and his mind during this trip.
That's actually where I was kind of leading you to, so I'm glad you already got there, because yeah, the biggest problem I had was that because the whole premise of the movie is Woody Strode playing the kid who witnessed all this, and yet that little kid is completely absent from the first half of the movie, and also we see flashbacks the little kid could not possibly have access to, actually undercuts some of the movie, because it's like this could actually happen this way. But I did, again, reference thing, I did feel like there was a lot of Once Upon a Time in the West, like how harmonica was handled. Because again, the harmonica we don't know what it's doing, and then we get a key flashback to give him context for it, the exact moment we're in. And so I was like, oh, okay, so you have seen other movies. That's kind of cool.
Just to bring this up now, then, since we're talking about the kid and Woody Strode and telling Jesse Lee's flashback story, the photo that he hands at the end of the movie is impossible to have given the people in the photo and when they die throughout the film. Boom.
Yes.
We get a training montage teaching Weezy how to throw a knife. Very nice. Got to be a fan of a training montage. Jesse Lee has an indigenous girlfriend, we see, showing the diversity of characters and everywhere else in part of his life. Do I need to ask, why did they claim to be part of Graham's Sing when they roll up in the brothel?
I actually don't know. I mean, I assume it was because, oh no, we have a white guy behind us, so it's okay. I assume that was the reason.
It just seems weird to me that like they would go in and saying, "Hey, we're part of Graham's group," but maybe it's because they get better treatment. But
yeah, it's just we're soldiers.
I'm always a fan of brothels.
Sure, yeah. And again, diverse brothel, both in race and body type, actually, which is kind of nice to see.
What I loved about the brothel, although we do get a little bit of gay shaming in the film from
it's a man, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, but
it's Angel too, I think, doing it. Yeah.
No, it's
no, it's Obobo.
I forgot his name now. Yeah, Obobo does it, but it doesn't make it a big deal, because then they also go that Obobo just doesn't do sex. So that sort of undercuts that himself, that maybe he just doesn't know at all what to do. But I was going somewhere. The madam says that we don't care what your skin color is, the only color we care about is green. Like that I loved. Like, boom, like we're gonna tell your entire thing. As long as you got money, you can do whatever you want.
Which is great. It's a way to kind of, in this kind of movie, you have to explain things a bit more. You can't, again, it's not a subtle film. So putting it in the character's mouth was good. Like, one color we care about is green. It's like, awesome. Love that.
What did you think of Father Time, Eddie? TikTok.
I love Father Time. Again, like it's a character with a gimmick, right? And so it's like, why do you call you Father Time? It's because you'll never beat me. And I'm just like, yeah, that's good. Actually, that's good. I like that. It's clever. It's clear that you tell a joke a lot, but it's a thing. And he's called Father Time throughout the whole movie. It's like, all right, I like it. It does bring up, for me, what is going to be a slightly longer running problem, which is that a lot of Little J's point of being in the movie can be easily done with other characters. Little J doesn't really need to be in the movie at all.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and also, it was a
Why is he so predominant?
right. Why is it so predominant? Because we have two gambler characters. We have two people who are ostensibly in charge, although Jesse Lee pretty rapidly takes over that role again. Like I said, we have two people who are tricksters, two people who are the funny guy who's muscle. Like, and this is also the point to your comment about the Podo. Angel dies before Father Time comes in. So there's a little bit of, okay, if we're rotating cast members here, you know, you could have rotated Little J out pretty fast and not lost anything. So I started to have some issues with, like, okay, Baldwin's feeling a lot like the white guy we had to stick in to make the executives happy with this movie, frankly. And it's not to disparage it. He's doing a great job with the role. I'm not mad at the actor specifically. You know, I'm enjoying Little J on the screen. But as soon as Father Time comes in, I'm like, so then why are you here?
Because there was a chance to like do how you're saying the switch when he helps him escape. They go back to their hotel, which I got to say, Eddie, they found them super fast.
They did.
Instead of killing Angel, they could have killed Little J, and then Little
Yep.
J could have done necessarily everything that. Sorry, Angel could have done everything that Little J could have done.
Yeah.
Because you had Father Time to gamble every time we needed a gambler.
Right. Every time you need a gambler, you have Father Time. Anytime you need someone who was decent with guns or a provocateur, you could have had Angel. Those two characters could have handled all of Little J's role with no change in the plot. So yeah, I mean, it's frustrating because we have a really strong ensemble cast, and it's always frustrating to me when you can see characters as superfluous. And in this specific instance, because the superfluous character is white, it sticks out a bit more to me.
Well, white in a cast of black talent, and
right, exactly,
which goes back to my entire point of thinking it was studio mandated because he's the name, like the lead first build character in the film. It makes no sense.
Yeah.
That's like saying, and it's not even like they could have put him like at the end with an and Stephen Baldwin. It's like Robert Downey Jr. in Iron Man movie being listed 12th in the credits.
Right. Now,
Jon Favreau, Iron Man.
For there you go, obviously. But to go back to this chunk of scene, like as much stick as I'm giving this specific situation, I do like they spend a fair amount of time in this scene allowing the characters to breathe. And so we learn a bit more about who Wheezy is. A little bit more. Jesse Lee's the only character we don't learn a ton about, but we have flashbacks for him, so that's fine. But we learn about Angel, we learn about Obobo, we learn about Father Time a bit, we learn about Little J a bit. So it's like we because it's an ensemble cast, we need to get to know these characters at least somewhat, and the movie does recognize it needs to take time to establish them before it cranks up the tension.
Yeah, and since we're beating him with a stick, Little J's entire thing is I used to have a black partner to show you that he likes black people, to show that he had a black friend and he wants a new black friend. Boom.
I did like that Jesse Lee kind of started to call him out on that. Was like, am I just your replacement black friend, right? Then they had the conversation.
Father Time?
Or was it Father? Yeah, sorry, I knew someone did. I thought it was Jesse Lee, but you're right. Father Time did call him out. Mm-hmm.
So there's some good stuff there, but I don't like how they take the gamblers, catch up with them, then they're killed by the pirate crew, and then our guys run. Like Eddie, my entire point of this is I don't get why these incredibly well-trained fighters, other than Father Time, keep running from these 3 or 4 people. It makes no sense.
Right.
Here, I'll give it to you because they had the drop on them.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't make sense for the rest of the movie. Other than them having to run away for no apparent reason, do you have anything else that you want to add in?
No, I think we can run away from this chunk of the recap.
Oh, my God. All right. So, much like the movie, we're going to hard cut with a very loud train scene and throw up the words Western Frontier and then more trains. And the train sound like leaps up like it's significantly higher than any other sound in the whole movie. And then we get a glimpse of the train before the posse riding horses over a wintry landscape, talking about how they're bonded together for life. The posse has the gold turned into bars by a blacksmith, a goldsmith, a melter, a smelter, midnight toker. Jesse has ammunition custom made out of the gold into ammunition. Unbeknownst to our midnight toker, who is also one of the people that killed his father, and the reason Jesse wants ammunition made of gold is because gold bullets are what you use to kill a demon and erase your past. To submit Father Time into their group, who doesn't have a bounty on him, he tells a random kid, "Hey, tell him Father Time and his posse are in a killing mood." So the kid runs off to tell everyone in town. And then the five prepare to dispense justice old school style on a bunch of races as yet another loud interrupting train that pulls you out of the movie arrives. And Graham and his forces arrive, forcing them to escape, flee yet again from a number of people that they could probably easily kill. We travel along the trail for a long time, enjoying some bonding scenes, some nude bathing scenes, a whole bunch of asses, until we discover a failed wagon train, a failed wagon specifically, not even a train, a failed wagon with two dusty corpses, and yet their son is alive under a blanket.
I have so many questions.
About which part, Eddie?
I mean, should we start with the fact that Jesse goes swimming butt naked except for his hat? I mean,
I told you we're going to be talking about this hat, the hat that never comes off. Eddie, he sleeps in the hat. I don't mean he sleeps with like the hat on his face, how other people do. Literally sleeps and the hat is on his head. It defies physics.
right. It's just fantastic. Um, but like at this point, one of my frustrations with the film is it feels like it has one subplot too many on one hand, and also Father Time's a bit odd. But let me decouple those. Like when he shot the goldsmith, for lack of a better term, um, like getting bullets made of gold and then make, oh, because the bullets expand because the stuff metal. I don't care. You're a pulp western. You're shooting gold bullets. You don't have to explain it. You know, fine. None of that bothers me. But then we get to a flashback, and it's like, oh, he's one of the people who lynched King David, and I thought that that Graham and his group and this group were going to somehow become one group, right? Like, oh, this is all connected, and felt like there's two different groups of villains that don't seem to be connected very much. So it was a little bit like I was a bit confused as to who were killing when and for what reasons, right? The flashbacks helped. Okay, this is Jesse's personal side quest of vengeance versus the whole overall group's, trying to avoid being killed by Graham. Um, but it was a bit muddy to me.
So I'm assuming Graham and his forces are like I don't need four of them, like the 10 horsemen of apocalypse constantly on their trail, forcing them to keep moving on, which is an idea to take, but I don't get enough of motivation from Graham, even for the goal that they're carrying that Graham wants.
Right, like, and I think that's one of the conflicts I'm having in my head is because like Graham is not a character, right? I mean, we've joked about him being functionally the master, but I mean, he does fill a similar role in the sense of he's just a melodramatic villain that chooses the scenery as a motivation to do stuff, right? So, and like that's fundamentally fine. But then the movie also introduces character building reasons why I have a need for vengeance, and we have a built-in character and the character arc that Jesse Lee goes through as a result of this. It's like I don't think you can quite have both sets of villains in the movie and them coexist comfortably, right? Because when you start having characters like this, you're right, Graham and his forces, you start to really see, oh yeah, they're just generically evil now. And so it brings up questions, right? And similar with the Father Time thing, like, it feels clunky that they're having to go, "Okay, let's make up a crime to get him added to the Warner posters." It smacks of, like we talked about earlier, if you had just had Father Time at the beginning and not had to introduce him a third of the way through the film, you wouldn't have this awkward transition period.
Yeah. And I understand like the in-world reasoning for wanting to have Father Time on their wanted posters because he's a gambler that they just met. They could sell them at any point in time.
Right,
I understand that logically, but it's not working for me on any sort of emotion level for the film. So I'm
right.
going to pause because I feel like I'm getting into like my final synopsis of this thing.
Sure,
But
sure.
all right. Uh, and I understand the train and like the train is super important for Westerns. All right, you know what? I'm going to backtrack a little bit and say the movie is trying to do too much. It's hard to say the movie is trying to do too much too quickly because it feels so slow.
Which okay, that's an interesting point, like, we also felt Silverado was doing a lot, but I didn't feel Silverado felt as slow as this movie feels.
Yes.
And I'm trying to figure out what the difference is. Is it because Silverado started off as an ensemble piece pretty clearly, and that ensemble stayed it grew, but it didn't change significantly throughout, and so therefore it was kind of building and building and building, whereas this feels like there are set pieces moving around, and maybe that's why it feels slow?
I think the reason this feels slow is that it keeps introducing more and more characters, and it's not been giving them any room to breathe.
Okay,
So we don't have any attachment. They're just part of the scenery. That means, all right, we got one more person. Now you have to stop to introduce this person and tell me about them because you're not going to let them do anything that shows me who they are. So you have to exposition dump to me, and then we move on past them, and that's
right.
slowing it down. And there's a lot of focus on Mario Van Peebles' shirtless chest for most of the movie. Everywhere,
And
boom,
and
Jesse Lee's chest.
occasionally, whole naked beat.
So, ew, yeah. um,
But
I'm
anyway,
trying not
trains.
to give my full synopsis now. Is my big thing. There, this flashback here for killing the Midnight Toker, we didn't need. They could have condensed the flashbacks. I think like 3 flashbacks throughout would have been more than sufficient. Part of it feels like that's increasing the running time is because these flashbacks are starting to feel very repetitive, and they might
Right.
add in like one additional piece of something that if they'd done earlier, we wouldn't need to have it here.
Like, on one level, I'm not against the concept of, um, the rest of the group run into random side character, they have an interaction, Jesse Lee walks in, murders him for no apparent reason, then we get a quick flashback, "Oh, it's because he was part of this group that murdered his father." I'm not against that as a concept, but you're right, like, it's other parts of the movie are spending time to establish characters, and so that jars a bit. Um, and to be honest, it does feel like, um, the player characters in the group went into town. Hey, we might get some gold bullets made. Made some gold bullets. And the guy playing Jesse Lee is like, "Hey, can I spend a hero point to say retroactive? This guy's one of the people that murdered my character." It's like, sure, I guess. And then shoots him. Right? It's like it does feel, or like a video game where it's like, oh yeah, your side quest you activated. You're within the radius. Realize this is one of the people that murdered your father. So quick, you've accomplished part of your side quest, and then moves on. Like it feels so shoehorned in as a result.
Because we know that he knows this guy, and that's why he doesn't come in when they first have the gold smelted. We know
Right.
all that, but I think it would have been better if they'd had it all done, and then he walks in and he shoots him, and all of them turn and say, "What the fuck?" And he just kind of says King David and leaves it at that. That would have given
Right.
him a chance to have like a dramatic moment. That would have let the acting play more than just a random flashback that's really loud and
And
intrusive.
honestly, it would have been interesting if, like, um, we have this cast of characters, and all of them are generally are charming or funny or whatever. And if so, if we had Jesse Lee like just randomly murdering people and refusing to explain it, and having the audience go, "It's weird that the leader is just so ruthless," and everyone else going, "Why is he doing that? Whatnot?" And maybe Boba or one of them are just like, we don't talk about it. And then eventually we as the audience get that, like you said, much like harmonica, near the end, we get the boom. Here's it. Here's the whole explanation as to why he's been doing all of this.
Yeah. So there's like so much here that, but it's just a little off.
Yep.
Anything else about this piece? I know that we talked more about that, like
Well,
what could have been different
yeah,
than the
but this
actual
chunk of
piece
the movie is
itself.
where I think it's most visible to kind of see where the seams are. So I think that's why we end up kind of talking about that. Um, the only other thing that, again, it jarred in a slightly different way, um, is that the random comment about gold killing demons, right? Like, I get it, they're metaphorical demons, but this movie's been so slightly weird this whole time that actual demons were not entirely off the table at this point for me. So, and they do nothing with that line, never gets followed up, it never gets called back to, it's just there.
Towards the
Um,
end, someone specifically re-references that line. It's like almost a
well,
throwaway line how they reference it to try
right,
to
but okay,
justify
fair,
it.
but the double, but it wasn't done in a way that made me felt like that line needed to be there in either case, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I
no,
will
that's it. So I mean, yeah, the whole section's about weird, but we'll see if it keeps going. We'll see how it goes.
I will toss out that they do have another sort of a high noon shot with like him walking into town and everything else. You have like a big high noon moment for all the bad guys. But
Yeah. Oh, you
I
were
don't
saying something
feel
about
anything for
trains.
it.
You were saying something about trains before we got derailed about weirdness.
You mean how the trains are super loud, or the actual historical
Well,
importance of
you're saying
trains?
you're about to say something about like something about trains bother you. Trains bother you in westerns, and then you went off a different tangent. I don't know if you wanted to finish that thought.
Well, no, it's not the trains bother me. It's their use of trains in this is
Oh,
jarring
okay.
and incredibly loud and disruptive for the film they're trying to do. And I think they're trying to stress the importance of trains for a plot beat that comes later,
Right.
but the execution here is lacking for me. Is what it is.
Fair enough.
Uh they make their way to Freemanville, a black town founded by King David. Jesse Lee is reunited with several old acquaintances, including his good friend Carver, who is now the sheriff of Freemanville. Carver's deputy goes to Cutterstown, not wanting to tip off Carver that he's working for Cutterstown Sheriff Bates. Bates, he informs Bates that Jesse has returned to Freemanville. The posse enjoys the hospitality of Freemanville until Bates tells Carver that the town will burn unless Jesse Lee is turned over to him and his deputies. Bates and a few of his deputies attack Freemanville the same night, looking for Jesse Lee. One of the deputies beats Wheezy in order to get answers. Watching discuss, Little J fights back in defense of Wheezy. Outnumbered, Little J is kicked to death by Bates and his men while Father Time hangs out at a table. And Bates is the ringleader of the clan who killed King David, as I don't think I mentioned that before.
Right. Right. And so now we're in a different movie. Right?
Yeah.
Uh, a whole new plot starts up, and I like it. I mean, I actually like the Freemanville plot. You know,
Yeah.
it's like there's this town that was founded by my father, and I left the town. I thought the town was not ever made. Turns out it was made. That surprises me how that happened, and getting into the politics of how that happened. I was really excited and interested about that. And there was a side benefit to me being excited and interested by the subplot, which I'll get to in a bit later because we're not there yet. Um, but it is, again, like it's a case of I thought we were running from these crazy assholes, and I thought this was about gold. No, now we're in a different subplot now.
Yeah. And I, I'm not gonna lie, I am excited that they're including like a black town because there's so much history associated with black towns,
Yeah,
black people going off trying to form their own communities and build all these resources and everything that you constantly have white races saying go do your own thing. And the second black people go do their own thing and become incredibly successful, the white races then come in and try to steal everything they have and destroy that prosperity.
yep,
Like there's a whole history there that is constantly ongoing. And my reoccurring issue with the movie is it wants to tell every single story, but not give it any depth or meaning.
Right. And like a surprisingly apt example in this chunk is that Pam Grier is like just in the background of
Yeah.
scenes. And I'm like, that's Pam fucking Grier, and you're not doing anything with her? What is going
There are
on?
a lot of great black actors and actresses in this town that are just there for cameo appearances.
Yeah.
I, I mm. There's so much potential and it feels really wasted. So,
Yeah.
to the plot, Eddie. So we rescue a kid whose parents are dusty on the trail that we don't ever
Right.
mention or talk about again,
Right.
and literally just drop him off in town and ride on. That was it. Like, out, kid.
Yep. Yep.
Obo
And
goes bloop and drops the kid off, and they keep
but
riding.
but this kid's gonna keep popping up because and it's seen clear over time, particularly this chunk, they're like, oh, this is the narrator, right? But again, raises the big problem of then how the narrator know about the entire first chunk of the fucking movie because
Yeah.
he wasn't present.
So it's. And the dynamic between the sheriff and Jesse Lee sitting down together saying, let's just have drinks like old friends and not worry about it, had so much potential to be like a real thing.
Yeah.
Because you've got like the law, and then you've got this person who is definitely a criminal, but they're supposedly friends, and you could have done like a whole movie on that, and you could have made it a love triangle with Lana, I think's her name.
Yep.
To be there too, and that could have been like an entire movie of itself. But nope. Nope.
And then on top of all of that, little Jay gets killed, you know? And on the one hand, I did like the subversion of the trope of the minority character who gets killed and gives agency and purpose for the primarily white character. I like inverting that trope a little bit in that regard.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, what I was kind of left with was, so why didn't you start with Father Time then?
What do you mean?
It kind of proved that little Jay wasn't really necessary because at this point, what motivation do they need? You know? I mean, they're already being chased by one group of crazy assholes. A race is about to come in to burn down the town that his, Jesse Lee's father tried to build and ultimately was responsible for. Why do they need even more motivation?
Because we're in a new movie, Eddie, so that means we need new plot and new motivation for the
Right,
movie.
right, right.
You're thinking of the old movie that
Fair.
we've literally ridden out of into this new movie. So it functions differently.
Yeah.
I love the singer. Like, the singer was amazing. And then you've got, finally, we get Tiny having his moment of relations. And there's a
Yeah.
big bond that happens there. One of the things I really liked is that we talk about it being a pulp movie, but when the fight happens between like Bates and all of his people, you see that he's really strong and he can do some damage, but when he gets hit, he's like any other person. Like, there's only so much damage you can take before he gets knocked out consistently,
Yeah.
like everybody else.
Yeah. I mean, the violence is not quite to the level of scaling based on your plot importance, but there's a smidge of it, you know? Not enough to bother me, frankly. So it's more like the violence is maybe pulp is not quite the right tone. Now that you mention that, maybe it's more just the violence is more theatrical, right? Because there's gold bullets, there's trick shots, there's silly shit, but there are still consequences for the violence, like you point out. So maybe theatrical is kind of more the tone that I'm kind of grasping for as we talk about that.
I really wanted to love this movie more than I do.
Yeah.
But there's. All right. So the sheriff, because this is an important plot point, is buying up all the deeds essentially from people that want to move on and giving them
Right.
money for it and collecting all
Right.
the deeds.
Right.
That is a nice plot beat to have in for what happens later. Because you think he's just being a nice, fair dude and find out that'll be subverted later.
And like, again, like I was enjoying this chunk because they do a good job of establishing the sheriff and him reiterating or reciting things that in the flashbacks King David said. So positioning him like he's a leader of the community and he has these ideological point. And so when the person does throwaway line of like, oh, we're gonna go back to Africa, which is just a casual reference to a historical thing that we have talked about before about people being forced to flee and tricked into quote unquote going back to Africa because they think it'll be better for them, and be exploited that way. Um, but he's like, "Oh, yeah, I'll buy back the land for it." And there's a casual comment of like, "All of this land is in your name." He's like, "Oh, it's just, kind of for legal purposes." And immediately I'm going, "There's something here, right?" Because I'm a suspicious motherfucker. Um, but you're right. It sets up an interesting tension of like, well, this guy's not as benevolent as he appears to be, maybe, but also that makes him a third villain now in the movie.
Yeah. Fourth, if we count the deputy that goes to Cutterstown to inform the clan leader about Jesse Lee.
Right. Right. Yeah, and
And
it's just
to some extent, they're even lightly playing with colorism here because the deputy is very much light skinned who goes to the white town and is doing some other things on the side.
right.
And it's lightly there if you know what colorism is. So it's like there are lots of beats here that they're putting in, but they're not giving them any room to breathe or do anything with.
Yeah, and honestly, I think if we hadn't Van Beck combination of my reading of Haunted West and then also us doing this run, I think a lot of that stuff would have just garnered over my head if I was to watch this movie casually because there's a lot of really cool historical references and stuff here. But the movie, like I said, is not taking hardly any time to actually dig into it. So as a result, uh, uh, it feels like there's like a it's weird to say this, but like I feel like another like half an hour of the movie would have actually made the movie feel faster because it would have ideally probably better would be to trim out some of these subplots and not try to tell, like you said, every single Black Western story in one movie.
Yeah, which yeah, I'm not gonna say the other thing I was thinking for that, but the all right, let's shift from that. I want to take a minute to talk about Lana, Papa Joe, I think's his name,
Yep,
who is Melvin Van Peebles, who is Mario Van Peebles' father.
which is
So that was
great.
nice. Who's not, of course, he's not playing King David because the King David actor is like dead already, so he doesn't get to interact with him. So that
Right.
was like nice that you get the father son on screen together. Uh, Lana is cool. I just like seeing that actress. So,
Yeah.
we get the start of like what could have been an interesting relationship dynamic between like her having stayed, like her heritage and everything else, and like Jesse Lee and like the tension of the town. That is also dropped.
Right. And like, yeah, it feels like these kinds of movies have romantic subplots, and therefore that is why this is here. Um, and like Lana and uh, Jesse Lee do have some chemistry. It's not bad or anything. We've certainly had people on screen where they have ca- you know romantic relationships and they actually don't really connect well. I mean, they're doing reasonably well. Um, but it's also like because of Papa Joe and Jesse Lee's actual off-screen chemistry, because they're actually father and son, that does kind of dwarf the manufactured chemistry, right? Just like the actual familial chemistry is kind of taking some of the steam out of the romantic subplot as well.
And I do want to point out that not all family members have that kind of chemistry because I can tell you, if it was me and
Sure.
my father, you wouldn't get that chemistry. You'd get two
Well, I
people
mean,
that definitely do
yeah,
not like each
same.
other.
Yeah, total same mood, right? I feel you on that front. But like, still, I mean, if you have two family members who do like each other and also who are have some experience performing on screen, I think there's going to be a natural boost to that chemistry.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why, like, For example, it's always entertaining to watch David Tennant and Peter Davison on because now they are family and they've been around each other so much that you can see that chemistry a bit more. The bickering is then a little funnier, a little more edge, which is great, you know. So when you have that kind of real world chemistry and you transfer it to the screen, it helps. And so, like again, because Lana has just such a anemic storyline, she's pushing water uphill to make this work, and she's doing the best she
Yeah.
can. Again, I'm not trying to criticize the actor at all. I think she's doing a really good job with what she has. It's just what she has is not much.
Anything else about this piece before? You know what? Now, next piece I want to talk about. Anything else about this before we move on?
No, let's move on.
Okay. I will point out one last thing though, because I looked at my notes. You think about death too much. Another pond push, because I forgot to mention the pond earlier. This movie loves pushing people in water, like
I
hands
noticed
on. They
that.
think it's funny.
It
Like
happens
bloop,
twice,
bloop,
3
bloop.
times.
I think that Mario Van Peebles watched El Topo because they like to push people in water. Obo and Jesse's former mentor, Papa Joe, are taken to Cutter's Town as prisoners. Jesse Lee and Father Time soon rescue them by posing as clan members and storming into the Cutter's jail. Jesse Lee kills one of the deputies, who was another one of the ones of King David's murderers. How many? Wow. While Bates arrives at the jail, he shoots and kills the mayor. Graham arrives right after that, witnessing the murder, aligns himself with the sheriff as a fellow friend of Jesse Lee. Jesse Lee realizes that Bates wants the town because of the railroad. The railroad.
The railroad. So I wasn't expecting a second Blazing Saddles reference in this movie.
Oh, jeez.
And I was just like, okay, they dressed as KKK members. It's like, I was almost expecting the putting their hands out thing, you know? It was like, but again, it was 20 years ago. I'm not mad about it. It's just funny to
Yeah.
me. It's like, of all the movies to homage, that one twice was entertaining, but a bit of a surprise.
It shows a love of westerns to some extent, though.
It does. It does.
And I always try to call out some of the homages to things, but like this feels like homage. I
Right.
wanted more story, Eddie. I wanted people to have actual dramatic beats, and they're not here. And it's not even like an action movie either. It's
Yeah, and like to your point, like when Graham kind of also makes the jump into this new movie, it was a bit of a surprise for me. I have pretty much forgotten about that subplot, you know, and it's like because it was about 20-ish minutes, and then he just literally stumbles into the plot line right when the murdering the mayor happens, and I was like, okay, if the idea is Jesse Lee is going to manufacture a "let's you and him fight" scenario, this could possibly work, right? And it's like, oh, so Graham and his group are going to fight against the racists and whatever, or they're going to team up and make one big group. Neither of these things really happens. So it's just like, okay, so like Graham's like, I'm also here, and then kind of leaves the plot again. It's just weird.
how is Graham tracking them? Is he Wolverine? He can smell them wherever they go. It is unreasonable.
He's following the
the
Wonder
thing is,
posters. And as we know, in all westerns, wanted posters just appear whenever you've committed a crime. They just appear in towns, and you just follow where they're actually at, like all video games tell you.
like they don't have a destination they're going to. Graham can't know about Freemanville because they randomly found like this wagon going to Freemanville to go there. So there's no way Graham would know where they were going when they leave New Orleans.
Oh, I know what it is. All of the gold bullets that Jesse Lee is using, he has an L stamped on them, and they're following those.
He wishes he was as cool as Lobo.
Seriously.
That's it. I want to fight more for the movie, but I can't. Like there's so many. The movie's not letting me get into the film. Like, I can't lose myself in the film because there's so many abrupt stops and starts, and it's not doing it. And I wanted it to. When Jesse Lee returns, he convinces a handful of town folks, but not Carver, to fight Sheriff Bates by telling them that the sheriff wants the land for himself to sell to the railroad when it comes through. The citizens of Freemanville fight Bates next day when he rides in, with Jesse Lee stating that if Freemanville burns, so does Cutterstown, before motioning to set off the sticks of dynamite. As they begin to gain the upper hand, Graham arrives with his cavalry and a Gatling gun, which he uses to cut people down. Jesse Lee charges the gun with a stick of dynamite, destroying the gun and killing some of Graham's troops, while Wheezy and Father Time arrive onto the scene.
Again, like I'm at this point, I'm just going, how many references can I catch now? Like, I felt like the Gatling gun at this point was kind of a Django-ish reference, because again, they whip the cover off, and there's a Gatling gun there, and people start falling, and I'm just like, that feels like reverse Django a bit.
There's just so much. Like, this is the big action beat for the movies. We're starting it, and you really want to be into it. And all I keep thinking this whole time is Mauro Van Peebles must have been cold in that open vest the whole time. Because even when they were like in the winter scene, he was in an open vest where there was snow on the ground. He's running here and he's in that open vest. Bullets whizzing by his chest, got to be going quick. So he must be cold.
Honestly, he might be one of those people where all of the heat escapes through his head because he has his hat on. It keeps him warm.
And we had our snipers up on rooftop to shoot down at people. There were so many good Western beats here that were not necessarily executed the best.
Right. I almost feel like we should kind of just get through the rest of the plot, because I feel like we're already hitting our summary at this point.
All right. I'll just read it all. I will do my other 2 stages beats that I have. Meanwhile, Carver plans to flee with the deeds to all the property in Freemansville, all of which are in his name, but he's stopped by Lana. Father Time shows up just in time to stop Carver from harming Lana. Time kills one of Carver's deputies, but is killed by Carver. Before Carver can flee, he's stopped by Bates, who reveals that they had a deal to split the proceeds from the town 50-50, which then makes no sense why the deputy would have went and told. Anyway, Jesse arrives in town to hear about the deal and watches as Carver is betrayed and murdered by Bates. Jesse kills Bates in a showdown, finally putting down his past demons to rest with gold bullets. Colonel Graham captures Lana and orders Jesse in the saloon, where they have a climactic fight resulting in Graham's death and the destruction of the saloon, which Graham has set ablaze. Jesse, Obo, Wheezy, and Lana watch as the townspeople fight the fire. The story ends almost a century later with an old man, Woody Strode, being interviewed by a reporter about the Black Cowboys of the Old West. The man, who was a young boy when he met Jesse Lee in Freemansville, gives the reporter a small book that Jesse had given to him, same book that saved Obo from being shot. In the end, a caption goes on to tell that there were over 8,000 Black Cowboys in the Old West whose stories have never been told due to omissions by Hollywood and others alike.
Right. So, I like a movie where the two villains that look like a character looks like he's at odds with the villain, turns out to be secretly a villain, and then we find out the two villains are actually working together. I was kind of thinking that was going to happen anyway. I just expected to be the sheriff and Carver, right? Or I expected it to be Bates and Carver. I expected it to be Graham and Bates. But Lana comes, and I like the movie where the potentially good guy turned villain is part of a love triangle, and the woman chooses one over the other. Like, again, it's a decent movie. I also like a movie where, and we glossed over this, a man coming back from the dead wearing an eye patch gets into a sword fight with the main protagonist while on fire. I love that. It was a great scene. It had nothing to do with literally like, here the Freemanville storyline wrapped up, and then it's and now we're gonna have this bonkers fight because oh by the way we also have to deal with Graham apparently, and it's gonna be just way the fuck out there. Uh,
I also skipped over discussing how Obo frequently kills people, which is the neck snap, old school style. So
right,
I think the creator of Assassin's Creed owes Mario Ben People some money.
fair enough. Yeah. Oh god, could you imagine Assassin's Creed? This movie as an Assassin's Creed game. I mean, that would be great. But I suppose that is Red Dead Redemption anyway. Um, but then yeah, then like we have this cute little thing at the end with Woody Strode. But like every 30 seconds, it just made me go, okay, but wait, but like okay, so you have the book that saved him. Okay, cool, great, but you weren't actually in that scene or anywhere near that scene to get that book, and how could you actually relate all of these things that you weren't actually present for, right?
I'm
And then
assuming they're going to say that when they were rebuilding the town, that's when they told the kid all their stories.
right,
One
but
would
then he's
think.
just looking back at the pictures. Like at the beginning, he looked at the pictures, and I had no context for them, and I largely
Yeah.
forgotten about them. But then he looks at the pictures again, and we make it very clear that those pictures could not have actually existed within the events that he relayed to us.
Timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly stuff.
Again, I made jokes about it, but this movie would actually make more sense as a Doctor Who episode, right?
All right, final thoughts on Posse 1993.
I went into this expecting to be a little downbeat off this movie because I expected to go a certain way. It went absolutely 4 or 5 different other directions, none of which were the way I expected it to go. And for yeah, again, like this is 20 years after Bucket the Breacher, after Blazing Saddles, so like Black Lead's Western, it was a rarity. Um, and it looks like they have a lot of love for Westerns, but I keep comparing it to Silverado because they're both are doing a lot of similar things, which is like, they're trying to bring Westerns back. They're trying to do a big ensemble Western. And as you point out, like ensemble Westerns become much more the norm after this point than the exception. So like they're trying to do this stuff, and it's clear they have a passion for both the historical material and the genre. But with Silverado, I think they made a smart move of just focusing on okay, we love westerns, but we're gonna cram all the tropes in, but we know how we're gonna get to all of those tropes, and then once we get there, we're gonna love it, right? We're gonna enjoy those tropes when we get there, but until we get there, we're gonna just do what the story demands, right? And this feels like 5 or 6 people all through, and and we should do this, and we should have this, and we should do this, and they all made it into the script, which is frustrating because I can't point to any one part of the movie and go, "That's the problem." And in spite of all of that, I still enjoyed watching it, right? Like,
Yeah.
there was no point in the movie where there was a couple times I was a little, like, confused or maybe a little slow. Um, didn't quite need to see that much, naked people having a swim, stuff like that. But, I mean, as a general rule, like, I wasn't, like, turning it off or rolling my eyes or finding something else to do. I was engaged the whole time.
So I will say though that it was nice to see there was as much like female nudity as there was male nudity in this film. Look at that. Boom.
Yeah, totally.
Nude quality.
Nude equality. Yep, absolutely.
A lot of it comes down to there is a lack of black and marginalized Western films. And
Yep.
this film wanted to try to fill that gap by taking all those stories from the black perspective and putting it all into one film, which would have been very difficult to near impossible to do beforehand. But it wanted to take all of that history and everything else into one film. And then they wanted to take a whole bunch of Western tropes and then throw those on top of that. and less into our window. That is impossible, I think, to create a coherent movie for people to watch and engage with and feel emotionally drawn into. You can like that's you telling people a message and giving them some action scenes and hoping something sticks. And it doesn't quite hit right because I think Silverado didn't have the problem of having to try to compensate for a lack of white led Western films. It didn't
Right.
have to make up that ground. So they could go and throw in whatever they wanted to, and people would be along for the
Good
ride.
point. No, that's actually a really good point because Silverado could use a shorthand a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's the you know how these things work, so we'll just give you a couple cool shots and then move on. But you're right. This is all unknown grounds for most people watch this movie, so they have to constantly establish themselves. Which so basically it's a lot of stop starting. It's like okay, we have to explain this part now. We move on now. We have to explain this part and then move on. And you're right. I think it's just too much.
And I think they also wanted to try to highlight a lot of the incredible black stars that never got a chance to be in what I think were like mainstream Hollywood films. Like I love
Mhm.
Pam Grier. Pam Grier was in a lot of non-mainstream films, and then I think after this, Quentin Tarantino put her in a film too. Jackie Brown, I think, happens after Posse. So
Right.
there's those sorts of things, and the problem is it is too much with too many things going on with too little time, and I mean, no offense to Marvin Peoples, but this I think was like his second film. So there
Yeah.
is a lot of pressure with all that. And then someone who is incredibly talented, but doesn't actually have the same amount of experience, contacts, and resources someone else might have had at that point in their career. But at the same time, Hollywood had tried to marginalize and dump all black directors and creatives into one big bucket, which they can't do. Kind of how if you said David Lynch and Steven Spielberg are the exact same. They make the same fucking movie is essentially what they
Right.
were saying for black people. Or
Right.
Kubrick makes the same movie. It doesn't work like that.
Right. Exactly. And I mean, uh, early on when we started recording, I was talking about like I was enjoying watching Tone Loc, for example, like because he was just clearly just happy to fucking be there, and I was
Yeah.
enjoying that energy. Um, but you're right, like uh, uh, Tone Loc and Pam Grier, just two random examples, are two very different actors doing very different things in the same space. And so if you're just kind of grabbing anybody and shoving them into the movie, there's a lot of film by committee energy about some of this movie, right? Like, it's like someone got handed Mario Van Peebles had a checklist of all things he wanted to do, and probably got handed a similar checklist of things studios needed to have happen, and they tried to reconcile those checklists as best as they could, and this is the end result of it.
Because in my mind's eye, what I think would have made this movie probably a lot more successful, and there could have been a sequel, is that the first movie is them reaching that wagon with those people and finding it.
Mhm.
Because you have that gives you all this extra screen time to add back into the film, to add depth and meaning to characters, tell out some of the backstory, and make the flashbacks more interactive than just a blackish vision in the distance. And that would get you cemented into those characters so you can keep the action beats, you have an emotional attachment to the characters, and then you see the wagon train, they pull out the little kid, bam, hard to cut the credits. And then you're like Freemanville or whatever in 2 years.
Yeah, and honestly, you could also have done stuff like, have Graham have been one of the people who was at King David's murder, and then so you have just the Graham stuff as the first movie, the entire first movie, and then you kill him also allows him a set of vengeance. That way, if you don't get a second movie, you can kind of pass it off as Jesse Lee's got some closure. But then the second movie, it's he was just one of the whole band. And then you have all the Freemanville stuff. You do that entire second plot as a whole separate movie, and then Angel's death, Little Jay's death, Father Time's death. That's the other thing is characters die real fucking fast in this movie.
Yeah.
But if you spread that out across a couple of films, then there's you have more time to get to know the character, and therefore more time for that death to matter and mean something.
Yeah. So it should have been two movies, essentially, is what I'm saying. And that
Yeah.
would have given you a lot of time to smooth over the things that didn't work for me. But I don't know if that would work for everybody else because I'm also trying to think of it from '93 and trying to get that audience to come to Western. So,
Right. But
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 it is better than the rating this movie received. It's a better movie than the ratings I've seen for this film.
Yes, no. The rate online, if you go by, anecdotally how it's rated, people are saying this is on the same level as like uh well, I was gonna say Silverado, but like people also are down in Silverado, which is like again weird to me. Um, but they're saying it's worse than Heaven's Gate, and it's just like in no way is that true, right? Like we were pretty we defended Heaven's Gate a little bit, but still, I would watch this movie way more than I'll watch Heaven's Gate again.
Yeah. So I guess this could be speaking more of me and my general dislike of Clint Eastwood, but I would watch this movie every day before I'd watch Bill Rider again.
Oh God, yes, and that's supposed to be a classic, quote unquote.
People love it. Some people think it's a masterpiece. I am not one of those people, but I understand what people like about it. It just wasn't made for me.
Right.
So Eddie, if people wanted to come to you and talk to you about how Heaven's Gate and Posse are the exact same film, where could they do that?
Well, before we do that, we should talk about the next movie we're going to talk about. But yeah, if you want to talk to me about it, you could find me at pugsteady.com. That's on Blue Sky. And you could talk to me actually about the next movie we're talking about. We're going to go from Posse 1993 to 1993. Oh, the other movie that came out in 1993, Tombstone, which is the Western I have seen. So we're talking about a movie I actually know a little bit about before I start watching it. It's going to be novel. I'm probably going to end up hating it because that's how these things tend to go for me, but whatever.
Wouldn't it be a weird twist if I said I had never seen Tombstone? Would that be like
It
the
would be
perfect
it'd be
twist?
hilarious, but we also know that's not true.
Yeah, it'd be a blatant lie, but it'd be a good twist though.
How about you? Where do they find you online?
Darker underscore Hugh on Blue Sky. You can come in the Discord that I keep saying I'm going to post a link for that I never do. So maybe I'll do it.
It's in the show notes. Discord's I've been putting the Discord in the show notes. So if you're listening to this on the podcast, it is with the show notes, or at least there's that.
But if people want to come talk to me about Posse and why my opinion is different than your opinion, and in fact Posse is a 10 out of 10, feel free to do so.
Okay. And then next time I will talk about Tombstone because I'm your Huckleberry.